Chapter 4. The troops emerged onto the riverbank in a column, with the red sun, which had just broken through the mist, shining down on them. Like everyone else's, half of my father's face was red, the other half green, and, like everyone else, he was watching the mist break up over the Blackwater River. A 14-arch stone bridge connected the southern and northern sections of the highway. The original wooden bridge remained in place to the west, although 3 or 4 spans had fallen into the river, leaving only the brown posts, which obstructed the flow of the white foam on top of the water. The reds and greens of the river poking through the dissipating mist were horrifyingly somber. From the dike, the view to the south was of an endless panorama of Sorghum, level and smooth and still, a sea of deeply red, ripe faces. A collective body, united in a single magnanimous thought. Father was too young then to describe the sight in such flowery terms. That's my doing. Sorghum and men waited for time's flower to bear fruit. The highway stretched southward, a narrowing ribbon of road that was ultimately swallowing up by fields of sorghum. At its farthest point, where sorghum merged with the pale vault of heaven, the sunrise presented a bleak and solemn, yet stirring sight. Gripped by curiosity, Father looked at the mesmerized gorillas. Where were they from? Where were they going? Why were they setting an ambush? What would they do when it was over? In the deathly hush, the sound of water splashing over the bridge posts seemed louder and crispier than before. The mist, atomized by the sunlight, settled into the stream, turning the Blackwater River from a deep red to a golden red, as though ablaze. A solitary, limp, yellow water plant floated by, its once fairy blooms hanging in withered pallor among the leafy grooves like silkworms. It's crab-catching season again, Father was reminded. The autumn winds are up, the air is chilled, a flock of wild geese is flying south. Uncle Arhat shouts, "Now, Doguan, now!" The soft, spongy mud of the bank is covered with the elaborate patterns of skittering claws. Father could smell the delicate fishy odor wafting from over the river. "Take cover behind the dike, all of you," Commander Yu said. "Mute, set up your rakes." Mute slipped some loops of wire off his shoulder and tied the 4 large rakes together, then grunted to his comrades to help him carry the chain of rakes over to the spot where the stone bridge and highway met. "Take cover, men," Commander Yu ordered. "Stay down till the Jap convoy is on the bridge and Detachment Leader Lang's troops have cut off their line of retreat. Don't fire till I give the order. Then cut those Jap bastards to pieces and let them feed the eels and crabs." Commander Yu signaled to Mute, who nodded and led half the men into the sorghum field west of the highway to lie in ambush. Wang Wenyi followed Mute's troops to the west, but was sent back. "I want you here with me," Commander Yu said. "Scared?" "No," Wang Wenyi said, even though he nodded spiritedly. Commander Yu had the Fang brothers set up their cannon atop the dike, then turned to Bugler Liu. "Old Liu, as soon as we open fire, sound your horn for all you're worth. That scares the hell out of the Japs. Do you hear me?" Bugler Liu was another of Commander Yu's longtime buddies, dating back from when he was a sedan bearer and Liu was a funeral musician. Now he held the horn like a rifle. "I'm warning you guys," Commander Yu said to his men. "I'll shoot any one of you who turns chicken. We have to put on a good show for Lang and his men. Those bastards like to come on strong with their flags and bugles." "Well, that's not my style. He thinks he can just get us to join them, but I'll get him to join me instead." As the men sat among the sorghum plants, Fang Six took out his pipe and tobacco and his steel and flint. The steel was black, the flint the deep red of a boiled chicken liver. The flint crackled as it struck the steel, sending sparks flying, great big sparks, one of which landed on the sorghum wick he was holding. As he blew on it, a wisp of white smoke curled upward, turning the wick red. He lit his pipe and took a deep puff. Commander Yu exhaled loudly and crinkled his nose. "Put that out," he said. "Do you think the Japs will cross the bridge if they smell smoke?" Fang Six took a couple of quick puffs before snuffing out his pipe and putting it away. "Okay, you guys, flatten out on the slope so we will be ready when the Japs come." Nervousness set in as the troops lay on the slope, weapons in hand, knowing they would soon face a formidable enemy. Father lay alongside Commander Yu, who asked him, "Scared?" "No." "Good," Commander Yu said. You are your foster dad's boy, all right? You'll be my dispatch orderly. Don't leave my side once it starts. I'll need you to convoy orders." Father nodded. His eyes were fastened greedily on the pistols stuck in Commander Yu's belt. One big, one small. The big one was a German automatic, the small one a French Browning. Each had an interesting history. The word gun escaped from his mouth. "You want a gun?" Father nodded. "Do you know how to use one?" "Yes." Commander Yu took the Browning out of his belt and examined it carefully. It was well used, the enamel long gone. He pulled back the bolt, ejecting a copper-jacketed bullet, which he tossed in the air, caught, and shoved back into the chamber. "Here," he said, handing it over. "Use it the way I did." Father took the pistol from him, and as he had held it, he thought back to a couple of nights earlier, when Commander Yu had used it to shatter a wine cup. A crescent moon had climbed into the sky and was pressing down on withered branches. Father carried a jug and a brass key out to the distillery to get some wine for Grandma. He opened the gate. The compound was absolutely still, the mule pen pitch black, the distillery suffused with the stench of the fermenting grain. When he took the lid off of one of the vats, in the moonlight, he saw the reflection of his gaunt face in the mirror-like surface of wine. His eyebrows were short, his lips thin. He was surprised by his own ugliness. He dunked the jug into the vat of wine, which gurgled as it filled. After lifting it out, he changed his mind and poured the wine back, recalling the vat in which Grandma had washed her bloody face. Now she was inside, drinking with Commander Yu and Detachment Leader Leng, who was getting pretty drunk, no match for the other two. Father walked up to a second vat, the lid of which was held in place by a millstone. After putting his jug on the ground, he strained to remove the millstone, which rolled away and crashed up against yet another vat, punching a hole in the bottom, through which wine began to seep. Ignoring the leaky vat, he removed the lid from the one in front of him, and immediately smelled the blood of Uncle Arhat. The two faces of Uncle Arhat and Grandma appeared and reappeared in the wine vat. Father dunked the jug into the vat, filled it with blood-darkened wine, and carried it inside. Candles burned brightly on the table, around which Commander Yu and the Detachment Leader Leng were glaring at each other and breathing heavily. Grandma stood between them, her left hand resting on Leng's revolver, her right hand on Commander Yu's Browning pistol. Father heard Grandma say, "Even if you can't agree, you mustn't abandon justice and honor. This isn't the time or place to fight. Take your fury out on the Japanese." Commander Yu spat out angrily. "You can't scare me with the Wang Regiment's flags and bugles, you prick. I'm king here. I ate fish cakes for 10 years, and I don't give a damn about that fucking big claw wang. Detachment leader Lang sneered. Elder brother Jan Ao, I've got your best interest at heart. So does Commander Wang. If you turn your cache of weapons over to us, we'll make you a battle line commander, and you'll provide rifles and pay. That's better than being a bandit. Who's a bandit? Who isn't a bandit? Anyone who fights the Japanese is a national hero. Last year, I knocked off 3 Japanese sentries and inherited 3 automatic rifles. You are no bandit, but how many Japs have you killed? You haven't taken a hair off a single Jap's ass. Detachment leader Lang sat down and lit a cigarette. Father took advantage of the lull to hand the wine jug up to Grandma, whose face changed as she took it from him. Glaring at Father, she filled the 3 cups. Uncle Arhat's blood is in this wine, she said. If you're honorable men, you'll drink it. Then go out and destroy the Jap convoy. After that, chickens can go their own way. Dogs can go theirs. Well, water and river water don't mix. She picked up her cup and drank the wine down noisily. Commander Yu held out his cup, threw back his head, and drained it. Detachment leader Lang followed suit, but put his cup down half full. Commander Yu, he said, I've had all I can handle. So long. With her hand still on his revolver, Grandma asked him, Are you gonna fight? Don't beg, Commander Yu snarled. I'll fight even if he doesn't. I'll fight, Detachment Leader Lang said. Grandma let her hand drop and Lang jammed his revolver back into his holster. The pale skin around his nose was dotted with dozens of pockmarks. A heavy cartridge belt hung from his belt, which sagged when he holstered his revolver. Jan Ao, Grandma said, I'm entrusting Do Guan to your care. Take him along the day after tomorrow. Commander Yu looked at my father and smiled. Have you got the balls, foster son? Father stared scornfully at the hard yellow teeth showing between Commander Yu's parted lips. He didn't say a word. Commander Yu picked up a wine glass and placed it on top of Father's head, then told him to stand in the doorway. He whipped out his Browning pistol and walked over to the corner. Father watched Commander Yu take 3 long strides to the corner, 3 slow, measured steps. Grandma's face turned ashen. The corners of Detachment Leader Lang's mouth were curled in a contemptuous smile. When he reached the corner, Commander Yu whirled around. Father watched him raise his arm as a dark red cast came over his eyes. The Browning spat out a puff of white smoke. An explosion erupted over Father's head, and shards of shattered ceramic fell around him, one landing against his neck. He shrugged his shoulder, and it slid down into his pants. He didn't utter a sound. The blood had drained from Grandma's face. Detachment Leader Lang sat down hard on a stool. Good shooting, he said after a moment. Good boy, Commander Yu said proudly. The Browning pistol in Father's hand seemed to weigh a ton. I don't have to show you, Commander Yu said. You know how to shoot. Have Mute get his men ready. Gripping his pistol tightly, Father darted through the sorghum field, crossed the highway, and ran up to Mute, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, honing his saber knife with a shiny green stone. Some of his men were seated, others lying down. Get your men ready, Father said to him. Mute looked at Father out of the corner of his eye, but kept honing his knife for another moment or so. Then he picked up a couple of sorghum leaves, wiped the stone residue from the blade, and plucked a stalk of grass to test its sharpness. It fell in 2 pieces the instant it touched the blade. Get your men ready, Father repeated. Mute sheathed his knife and laid it on the ground beside him, his face creased in a savage grin. With one of his mammoth hands, he signaled Father to come closer. Ah, he grunted. Father shuffled forward and stopped a pace or so from Mute, who reached out, grabbed him by the sleeve, jerked him into his lap, and pinched his ear so hard that he grimaced. Father jammed his Browning pistol up into Mute's rib cage. Mute grabbed Father's nose and pinched it until tears came to his eyes. An eerie laugh burst from Mute's mouth. The seated men laughed raucously. A lot like Commander Yu, isn't he? Commander Yu's seed. Dogwan, I miss your mom. Dogwan, I feel like nibbling those date-topped buns of hers. Father's embarrassment quickly turned into rage. Raising his pistol, he aimed it at the man, wishfully thinking of date-topped buns, and pulled the trigger. The hammer clicked, but no bullet emerged. The man, ashen-faced, jumped to his feet and wrenched the pistol away. Father, still enraged, threw himself on the man, clawing, kicking, biting. Mute stood up, grabbed Father by the scruff of his neck, and flicked him away. He flew through the air and crashed into a thicket of sorghum stalks. A quick somersault, and he was on his feet, railing and swearing as he charged Mute, who merely grunted a couple of times. The steely looking in his eyes froze Father in his tracks. Mute picked up the pistol and pulled back the bolt. A bullet fell into his hand, holding it in his fingers. He looked at the notch in the casing from the firing pin and made some unintelligible hand signs to Father. Then he stuck the pistol into Father's belt and patted him on the shoulder. What were you doing over there? Commander Yu asked. Father was embarrassed. They said they wanted to sleep with Mom. What did you say? Commander Yu asked sternly. Father wiped his eyes with his arm. I shot him. You shot somebody? The gun misfired. Father handed Commander Yu the shiny dud. Commander Yu took it from him, examined it, and gave it a casual flick. It described a beautiful arc before plopping into the river. Good boy, Commander Yu said. But use your gun on the Japanese first. After you finish them off, anybody who says he wants to sleep with your mom, you shoot him in the gut. Not in the head and not in the chest. Remember, in the gut. Father lay on his belly alongside Commander Yu. The Fang brothers were on his other side. The cannon had been set up on the dike, aimed at the stone bridge, its barrel stuffed with cotton rags, a few sticking out behind. Fang 7 had placed a bundle of sorghum tinder next to him, some of which was already smoldering. A gourd filled with gunpowder and a tin of iron pellets lay beside Fang 6. Wang Wenyi was to Commander Yu's left, curled up, holding a long-barreled fowling piece in his hands. His wounded ear was stuck to the white bandage covering it. The sun was staked high, its white core girded by a pink halo. The flowing water glittered. A flock of wild ducks flew over from the sorghum field, circled 3 times, then dived down to a grassy sandbar. A few landed on the surface of the river and began floating downstream, their bodies settling heavily in the water, their heads turning and darting constantly. Father was feeling warm and tingly. His clothes, dampened by the dew, were now dry. He pressed himself to the ground, but felt a pain in his chest, as from a sharp stone. When he rose up to see what it was, his head and upper torso were exposed above the dike. Get down, Commander Yu ordered. Reluctantly, he did as he was told. Fang 6 began to snore. Commander Yu picked up a clod of earth and tossed it in his face. Fang 6 woke up bleary-eyed and yawned so heroically that 2 fine tears appeared in the corner of his eyes. Are the Japs here? He asked loudly. Fuck you, Commander Yu snarled. No sleeping. The riverbanks were absolutely still. The broad highway lay lifeless in its bed of sorghum. The stone bridge spanning the river was strikingly beautiful, a boundless expanse of sorghum greeting the reddening sun, which rose ever higher, grew ever brighter. Wild ducks floated in the shallow river water by the banks, noisily searching for food with their flat bills. Father studied their beautiful feathers and alert, intelligent eyes. Aiming his heavy Browning pistol at one of their smooth backs, he was about to pull the trigger when Commander Yu forced his hand down. What the hell do you think you're doing, you little turtle egg? Father was getting fidgety. The highway lay there like death itself. The sorghum had turned deep scarlet. That bastard Lang wants to play games with me, Commander Yu spat out hatefully. The southern bank lay in silence, not a trace of the Lang detachment. Father knew it was Lang who had learned that the convoy would be passing his spot, and that he'd brought Commander Yu into the ambush only because he doubted his own ability to go alone. Father was tense for a while, but gradually he relaxed and his attention wandered back to the wild ducks. He thought about duck hunting with Uncle Arhat, who had fowling piece with a deep red stalk and leather strap. It was now in the hands of Wang Wenyi. Tears welled up at his eyes, but not enough to spill out. Just like that day the year before, under the warm rays of the sun, he felt a chill spread through his body.